I'm Courtney with Outlander Behind the Scenes. Today we are discussing episode 408, Wilmington. And I write the blog Outlander Behind the Scenes, and I do cast and crew interviews in this discussion with my ladies. And yeah, I'm not a book purist. I like referencing the book. I like reading the book and then watching the show and enjoy them both. And we also have Antoinette.
Good evening. Cheers. Bottoms up and all that. I'm Antoinette. I'm a book reader. I love the show. I like to see the creative choices that they make in terms of adapting the books and bringing them to life on TV. So I enjoy the books for themselves and I enjoy the show for itself. And so tonight I am drinking sangria. And I'm drinking it out of my fancy crystal glass that I got at a charity shop.
Love it.
Because I'm feeling rather fancy this evening.
You're looking rather fancy. I just said before, Catherine, you got there, I'm like, what's going on, Antoinette? You're getting hotter every episode.
I'm like fine wine. I get better as I get older.
I am Catherine. I am a family physician. I'm a book reader. I am a show watcher. I am not a purist by any means. I do find that I enjoy the books and I enjoy the show as I limit my exposure to various interpretations of the show and the book. And that's something I'm coming across more and more with time. I am in South Carolina, so I am paying homage to, I'm drinking a Carolina Red Muscadine wine.
Oh. Sounds good.
Lovely.
So my name is Carmen Schmidt, and I am a retired professor of human anatomy. My interest in human anatomy led me to Diana's books, and I was a book reader first, but rather late. I didn't start reading them until the year that they produced the first season of the TV show. I love both the books and the show. I do like to compare them. I don't think that I'm one of those string them up kind of people when I feel that that the show falters a bit, but I do like to point it out because I think it's interesting. I think it's of interest. I don't mean to be cruel. I actually think it's interesting to compare and contrast people's vision of things. And tonight I am comforting myself with a nice glass of Riesling wine, which is one of my favorites.
I love a good Riesling. I love a good Riesling too.
I do too. Yeah.
Cheers.
My overall impression of 408, I think the first time I watched it, I was pretty riveted. I think it's a solid, good episode. It's not, I would call it a good episode. It didn't blow me away, but there's some good parts. It kept moving forward. There was some intrigue. The acting was pretty good. Yeah. So that was my overall impression. Antoinette?
My overall impression of 408. This is the second time I watched 408. I watched it again in preparation for talking about it. Because the first time I watched it, I did not like the episode at all. I didn't think it was a good episode. And I didn't record it as I normally record the episodes so that I can rewatch them. So when I came to rewatch 408, I said, let me come with an open mind. Let me not prejudge it based on, the first time I watched it. And let me see, what I can take away from it. And to be honest, I liked it even less second time around. I thought it was disjointed. It felt cobbled together. There were so many things happening, so many different storylines that I could not get invested in any particular storyline because things just kept jumping around. Too much for my liking.
Okay. Catherine?
It wasn't my favorite. There were parts of it that I thought were done very, very well. There were parts that were done so well that it made it difficult to watch. So I probably didn't watch it, not because I thought it was a bad episode, but just because it was done so well and it had the effect it was supposed to, that I found it too difficult to watch. I didn't feel like it's too disjointed. However, I felt that there were parts that should have been allowed to percolate a little bit more. That there was just so much involved that rather than jumping to the next scene, they should have just kept them longer and then gone to the next one and kept it longer rather than jumping back and forth. So I agree with Antoinette in that regard. But overall, I just thought it was very, very well done. The acting was well done. You know, I loved the walls. I just thought it was overall, it was one of the better, definitely one of the better acted episodes, and overall, I would say one of the most effective. When I not effective, affective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Carmen?
I would rate this episode as being good. There were parts of it that were okay to me, and then there were other parts which were quite good. I wouldn't rank it poor, but there were some parts that I felt were okay. I thought the acting was competent. I thought I would have liked to have seen how a woman might have handled this, writing this episode, since it involves a rape scene of a woman being raped by a man. I thought that it was interesting that they had a male write this. And I don't mean to be harsh about Luke, because who knows, it may have been assigned to him. I have no idea how they, I've heard that they kind of choose once in a while, but I think it's the upper echelon writers that get to do the choosing, and then the rest may be assigned. But I think it would have been interesting to have seen it if it had been written from a female perspective.
Favorite scenes and what worked for you, Antoinette?
Oh gosh. My favorite scene was a little snippet that we got with Claire and Marceline. I love Lauren Lyle in this role, and I wish we could see more of her when she's talking about being a mother to that wee bear. Oh, I just wanted to squish her. She's exquisite. I do love that burgeoning relationship between her and Claire. And I wished we had got more than a snippet in this episode. And so what worked for me in terms of TV production and in terms of the aesthetics of a good television show, I thought the depiction of the rape was very, very well presented dramatically. I thought it was good TV. I thought not showing the actual physical assault, but hearing it juxtaposed against the people who were just sat there not doing anything and carrying on as if nothing was happening. I thought that was very, very well produced and delivered.
My favorite scenes, I actually had two, was the one with Claire and Marcelly, definitely. The acting on both their parts was really well done. You didn't have to know that Claire was thinking about Bree at that moment. You could see it in her face, you could see it in her actions. And then Marcy, again, yeah, I agree with you, Antoinette. I just wanted to hug her when she was going on about how she felt about being a mother. I felt that was one of the most touching scenes in the show of that episode. And given that, there were two people who were supposed to be in love, making love for the first time, that was a pretty big deal. That her scene actually, to me, was the most emotionally touching. The other that I enjoyed was when Murtaugh saw Fergus and realized he was Fergus. I just loved that scene so much. It was just like this little kid who was throwing knives at the church, last season, and suddenly this grown man who's there, and he just and I'm just finding that Murtaugh, his interaction with Fergus, I love. What I thought worked was I felt what worked was the sense of urgency in each of the scenes. I thought that the surgery urgency, the urgency of getting to Murtaugh to warn him, the urgency of the, of Bree and Roger coming together and then handfasting, the urgency of even in the rape scene, which was very difficult, there was a heaviness, I guess, is the best way of putting it, that I felt wasn't done gratuitously, but was just done well. I mean, I just overall, I just felt like there was enough lightness to counter the heaviness, but overall, it was just done well.
My favorite scenes, I had two. Marcelly and Claire talking about the Baron, and Murtaugh and Fergus. So that's pretty telling because those are really, really short scenes. But I think one of the things about that makes Lauren Lyle so good as Marcelly is the pacing, that she's not afraid. I mean, like, she stops and thinks for a minute, or feels her love for her child before she goes on with her dialogue. And it just, she does. She says, "Okay, everybody, I'm gonna set the pace. Here we go, and you're gonna just get absorbed into my dimples." She's just she. I think Catherine, you said it last 412. She's a scene stealer, and she's and they're both really strong actresses, and there was so much tenderness that came across in that. And then Claire being like, "Oh yeah, I can't let her know I have a child." Yeah, so I would imagine that was my favorite scene. And then the Murtaugh Fergus, I kind of wish it would have been more of a reunion, but the same thing. Duncan Lacroix slows that scene down, even though they're in this life-threatening situation. He actually gives Fergus that due of that pause. That's like, "You're Fergus?" There's just a moment there. And then I love when he goes, "He's at the theater." I mean, I don't know. It's so Murtaugh the way he does it, And then what worked for me, the rape scene. In some ways, that was more traumatic for me than Jamie's rape scene. And then also the music really worked for me. I thought the music leading up to the rape scene and the music after the rape scene, it was all just very chilling. It very much lent a lot to the whole thing.
The Outlander chords. That's what I call them, because I don't hear them anywhere else but in Outlander.
Oh, really?
They're like these. I've been trying to figure out what they are, and the best I can come up with, it is like they're like augmented seventh, like a minor augmented seventh, and I'm not even sure if that's a real chord, but I tried to play it on the piano, and then I got a chord book out and tried to figure out they're Outlander. When I hear it, I can be anywhere, and I hear that, and I know it's Outlander.
Pretty genius of Bear,
Yeah.
You could always message him and ask him.
I will, actually.
Yeah. He probably will answer. I've had him answer mine before. So
yeah, I will ask him.
Actually, did you ask him an anatomical question, Carmen?
No, I didn't actually. You guys will not believe this, but my favorite scene was between Claire and Marcelly too. And that's, we all four agreed that the favorite scene. Now that hasn't happened before, and I don't think,
It
there's
hasn't,
been
no.
2 or 3 of us, but never 4.
Nope.
So
yeah, I don't even think maybe
I think,
2. I don't even think 3.
maybe not.
Mm-mm.
I agree about Lauren. I just think she's like a beacon. She just shines, and she can take the smallest snippet of, that was just a few moments and turn it into something that grabs your heart. I just think that's remarkable acting. And I think it was Catherine that said that she paces. Was it you, Catherine?
No, it was Courtney.
Courtney, you said that she slows her words down. She doesn't rush it. She doesn't push into it. She just lets it flow as if she were actually thinking it at the moment and delivering it to a person in her presence. And I think that's quite remarkable. I enjoyed also the scene of Tryon, Jamie, and Frohawk in the the coach, when Frohawk says, "I saw him leave the play," and everybody thought it was Jamie, and Jamie thought he was talking about him, and then he says, "Oh no, it was George," and Jamie lets it. Oh yeah, yeah, and he went with Martha too. They went together. I thought that was a clever little scene. And then I enjoyed Claire meeting George and Martha Washington, her delight, and her excitement about explaining to Jamie what the future of this man was. I thought that was a cute thing. But an interesting thing in the notes on this, on Outlander Community, it said George Washington doesn't appear in the books. And I'm like, what? Oh, yes, he does. He doesn't appear in Drums of Autumn, so they put him forward, but he does appear in the books. And that's just a little side thing I wanted to get in there.
Anything that really worked for you?
I hate to say the rape scene worked for me because it seems like the wrong word to use for such a horrific event. But I thought it worked. Let's put it that way. Rape doesn't work for me, but I thought the scene worked, the way it was presented, the way it was acted. And I've thought a lot about, because there was a lot of commentary online about the patrons doing nothing. But what would they have done against Bonnet? I mean, the men at the table knew what he was. Now, they didn't have to laugh. There was a couple of them that were amused by it, or they acted amused. But I think they were probably scared shitless of him. And and the women, the one woman, maybe 2 women, there's nothing they could do. They were powerless, basically. So you'd think, that they might go get the police or do something like that, because that's what we might do nowadays. But in those days, they wouldn't have interfered, I don't think. So I thought that was probably fairly true to the times, perhaps.
There were a few men, though, who did look very uncomfortable. They showed
That's true.
a couple who were very uncomfortable, didn't like the idea of it, but they just kept their head down. And I'm sure out of fear of Bonnet.
Well, and in the time period, let's just go ahead and discuss that, the rape. Yeah. The time period, that was not unusual, right? For people, women were property. I mean, there's the portrayal in Outlander, and we see Claire, and she bosses everyone around, but the actuality in the 1700s is, women were property.
Yeah,
they were, but I don't know how common rape was. I don't imagine it's probably as common as it is in our culture, but I could be mistaken about that. I don't know that the figures are known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I tend to agree with Carmen that I don't think rape was very prevalent. I don't think there was a rape culture in as much as women were property. They were also sort of put on a pedestal and idealized as well. And so I'm not sure that there was that kind of rape culture in the sense that women were disposable and, were there, solely for a man's pleasure, whether or not she wanted it. So I would tend to agree with Carmen on that.
I don't think there was a culture, but I think that there was a certain attitude of any woman by herself was fair game.
Yeah, and a woman that went somewhere with a man alone
was
that was a clear indication of a choice that Brianna was completely unaware of.
But one of the things about that scene that did bother me was that I felt that on Bonnet's part, it was just so poorly acted on his part that it was almost it almost turned it into a like a comedy sketch. I mean, that's how it was coming off on his part. I just felt, like I said before, I just feel like he should be more 50 Shades of Grey and less, Pirates of the Caribbean. And I just felt like there was just too much of the movement and all that, and it's it just seemed too much. There was violence, there was physical violence, but it just seemed incongruent with the rest of what he was doing. I don't know, just something with his acting didn't seem right. But the way it was edited, however, was fantastic.
I know Sophie had talked about that. She was disappointed because they filmed it and she was disappointed they did it the way that they did. But I found that probably even more
harrowing.
Yeah.
I agree with Kathy about Bonnet, the Bonnet character and how it's being played. But I'm not sure if it's the writing or of how he's interpreting it, but sometimes it can be a bit jarring. And throughout that scene, there were points with him and his interaction and his over the top hamming in certain things that were a bit disconcerting. But taken as a whole, the scene still worked. And I think the scene was harrowing even more so because we couldn't see, and it was left to our imagination, what she was being put through in that room.
I would like to add that I think that I've probably been the most critical in this group of Sophie's acting, mostly because of her mouth speaking through her teeth. But I thought she did very well in that scene, projecting her dismay, her completely, she went in there without even that possibility entering her mind because she wasn't presented with that kind of a social option in being raised in Boston. I mean, she didn't even think that he would do that. And then I felt that I could just see her thinking, oh, what a fool I am, that I put myself in this situation. I thought she really, it was spot on. I don't think she overacted. And I thought that her leaving, picking up her boots where somebody had set them outside the door like you would, on Christmas Eve or something. I mean, it was just such a stark juxtaposition of the two. And then her walking up the stairs and there was no sound at all. And I thought that was very, very good. It was absolute silence. And I thought that was effective.
Well, it wasn't silence. You could hear the fire crackling and you could hear, I'm very auditory, and you could hear just the homey sounds of dishes being sort of in the background.
Oh, that's true.
Maybe washed or something. And to me, that made it even more poignant. Like, this has just happened to you and everyone else is going on with their lives. I thought actually this was Sophie's best episode of season 4.
Wow.
I would agree.
Yeah. And I came to that when I rewatched it because the only scene that I was a little was and Antoinette, you said this, when she does mundane things. And what was she? Oh, it's when she's at the very beginning and she's asking where the Gloriana or how she can get to Cross Creek. That was her worst scene. But I felt in the hand fasting and lovemaking scene, she was actually excellent. I bought that she was in love with this man and that she was this innocent, coming to this, and then her feelings at finding out that he had kept that information from her, and then the rape scene. I just thought she did a great job in this episode, and I'm very happy to be able to say that.
I'm not so sure I agree with you that this was her best episode. I think she did a good job with the rape scene. I think she did a good job with the hand fasting scene. I have a whole nother take on that whole lovemaking scene.
I was waiting for this.
Yeah, because no, I didn't think that her and I didn't like that whole scene. I didn't like anything about it. I didn't like Sophie in it. I didn't like Richard in it. I didn't like any part of that scene. And so it's difficult for me to say that this was her best episode, even though I thought she did well, because I thought that there were other episodes when she was stronger throughout the entire episode. I think for this, she was very good in certain parts, but in other episodes, I've seen her maintain that a little bit better.
It was mentioned that Bonnet Ed tends to sometimes characterize his part, but one part to me that I didn't like was when he runs his fingers through his hair like that and kind of tosses his head back. I did not think that was
appropriate or
it didn't fit with the rape scene. I mean, it just he went like this. If you go back and watch, you'll see it. It was quick, but he does, and that sort of threw me off. I didn't like that. I think he treated it a little bit too offhand. If he's going to, take his pleasure with a woman without her consent, I thought he acted a little bit too offhand about it. Like maybe it had been a little bit more intent on his goal and less prancing around.
Was it, did you do that before the rape or after?
Yeah.
Yes, before.
No,
It
before.
seemed incongruent it was a sociopathic act, and the hair thing threw me too. It just didn't fit with that. It's like you're either a sadist or you don't care, but there's still some. It didn't seem it came from pleasure. It didn't come from anything. It didn't fit.
Let's talk about the hand fasting scene. Antoinette?
The hand fasting, I didn't actually mind the hand fasting scene. For once, I was almost buying the Brie Roger connection. There was a little bit of the beginnings for me of some kind of tenderness, some kind of chemistry there in the hand fasting scene. So that part of it, I was fine with, because I've never bought the Brie Roger connection, because I don't think that there's no electricity there. There's no heat there. To me, whatever is going on between them seems forced and unnatural and doesn't flow organically. But, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief and buy into it. And that first bit of it, the hand fasting and the vows and the nervousness and the silly laughter and that kind of thing, I bought into that. But then we went to the lovemaking scene. And one of my pet peeves is the laziness. Why are they drawing parallels between Jamie and Claire and Roger and Brie when it comes to intimate scenes? It's like they feel that we have a formula with Jamie and Claire, and we can just slap it onto Roger and Brie, and hey presto, it will work. Newsflash. It don't work that way. That's not how it works, and the parallels in terms of the slow undressing, and then Roger saying to her, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." And I'm saying, what the hell? even down to parroting Jamie's words. I think the lack of chemistry is exacerbated when they run these parallels because it's such a stark contrast. I think if they want this couple to grow on us, they have to give them their own way of doing things. They have to stop mimicking what Jamie and Claire do. They are young people. They don't have to follow a set pattern or slowly untie the knot to the shift. Put a little bit more thought into it. I'm sure they could have come up with a more creative, singular way for Roger and Bree to make that first sexual connection. Normally, I don't feel uncomfortable for actors and actresses when they do love scenes because it's all part of the modern way of producing TV. People want reality, they want the nitty gritty, they don't want any fake stuff, and these actresses sign off on it. And for the most part, they have to be comfortable with it in order to do it. So I don't feel any qualms. But I felt qualms when I was watching Roger and Bree. I felt uncomfortable for Sophie. I did. It felt exploitative to me, and I felt uncomfortable for her watching it. And I put that solely at the feet of the writers and the directors. They have this beautiful young woman and Roger. If some more thought had gone into it, we could maybe have had a beautiful little scene there, which could have sold skeptics like me of the Roger Bree relationship, which could have sold us a little bit more, made us care about them a little bit more and buy into it.
I do agree with Antoinette. I felt like the nudity, the amount of nudity that Sophie was shown, or shown of Sophie, seemed more gratuitous than plot enhancing.
Was that and here's where we're going to discuss. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but do you think that's because, is the difference a little bit because with Sam and Katrina's scene, they were both undressed, and so it felt like more of an even playing field?
No, I think what it is that the characters in of themselves, Claire is far more of a sexual being. She was older. She was more comfortable in her skin. She was experienced. She had already had sex before. So it wasn't as if it was more. And then I guess because the experience dynamic was shifted. He was a virgin. She was experienced. And I think in that regard, it came off as more sensual and sexual and realistically so. Now with Bree and Roger, one, it's very odd. I find Rick Rankin quite attractive as a person, but he loses it with Roger. I just find that what they do with Roger takes away all of his sexiness. I mean, in life, he's a sexy guy, but as Roger, he isn't. And granted, that's the character in the book. I mean, Roger's kind of goofy in the book too, but
he's not though. He's
not terribly goofy, but he's not. He is.
He's gets physically attractive in the book.
He's physically attractive, but his demeanor is goofy. He's not.
I mean,
he's not.
He's a professor.
I feel like the way
he's more nerdy.
Act. But I think that he's acted the part in the show is true to the book. I don't feel like it's just a completely, it's not exactly, but I don't think it's such a derailment.
I think Roger is actually edgier than book Roger.
I find he's edgier, but not sexier.
No. Yeah, he's not sexier.
And the thing is, I find that honestly, I find Jamie sexier than Sam, and I find that Rick is sexier than his character. I had no hormonal interest in what was going on. It was realistic, obviously. I mean, you make love with your clothes off, but I felt it was well acted. I thought it was well choreographed. I mean, like when it was Jamie and Claire, I felt it.
Since I have been editing 412 for the last few days, Antoinette expresses very vehemently in that episode discussion that she did not enjoy the wedding night of Roger and Bree. And so I really looked at it to try to kind of be fair and compassionate and figure out, here are some things, because I was trying to figure out, why doesn't this scene work? Because I watched Sophie and she literally, her smile, she looks like a young, in love girl all through all of it. I agree they're both modern. They would just rip their stuff off. They wouldn't be, doing this Jamie and Claire slow undressing scene, I don't think. I think part of the problem is, so in the book, Roger is 7 years older than Bree, and at their hand fasting, she's 21 and he's 28. In real life, Richard is 36 and Sophie is 25. So he's 11 years older than she is in real life. And I think part of it is that, when Jamie and Claire got married, they were all cleaned up for their wedding, and they both, they're the same age. They both looked really nice. In this scene, he's been on that ship for 2 months or however long it was, 4 months. I don't know. I was thinking about that a lot. Like, I never thought about hygiene when I was watching Jamie and Claire, but with those guys, Sophie is gorgeous. I mean, she's a gorgeous woman. And then Roger, just because of his costume, his wig, he's dirty, he's got this beard. So I just feel like that lends itself. And I also think, Jamie and Claire had this slow burn that we got to watch and be invested in. And so we got to build up to that. And Roger and Bree, we never have seen anything like that. They fight most of the time. There hasn't even been like longing looks. And so it kind of feels like two strangers.
Carmen, you know the books well, and so what did you think?
I thought the hand fasting was all. I'm trying to think of what I can say that will shed any more light on this, but I think the hand fasting part was okay. I do think that they don't have any chemistry together, and I know that they have a lot of fans that that think very highly of Roger and Bree together, but I just don't see it. I don't feel any hormonal engagement, like Catherine said. Whereas when Jamie and Claire 109, I was on the floor with them.
Dirty girl.
Yes. I just don't feel that. I think part of it is the writing. I think it was clunky. And I do think that I agree that Bree had some things to say that fit in the setting. But Roger didn't say hardly anything that was, you're the most beautiful woman I ever saw. But he really didn't say it with a lot of heart. To me, I mean, it was, and then I do think that it was a bit gratuitous because the camera rested on her breasts for a very long time. And, it did, if you think back to 107, the wedding, it did show Claire's breasts, but it didn't rest on them. It was part of Jamie looking at her and she looking at him. And when it showed it, it was part of their lovemaking. Whereas this was just like, oh, let's stare at this young woman's lovely breasts. And they were lovely. I mean, she's beautiful, like has been said. But I didn't list it as one of my favorite scenes because it wasn't. And I didn't feel invested in it. And I'm waiting to see if their chemistry will come forth with time. I hope it will, but right now I'm not feeling it.
I would like to bring up one thing though that I felt was, and I know we've had this discussion before about his reaction to someone talking about his dad bod, but I thought that one of the things I appreciated about this scene was that they didn't try to make him something other than what he was. He was a professor. He wasn't some guy who worked out at a gym. He wasn't some guy who did a lot of physical activity except for the time he was on the ship. So you wouldn't expect him to be muscular. You wouldn't expect him to be all that lean, except maybe lost some weight from traveling. But, I thought that part was very realistic, and I appreciated that.
I will say that in the book, Brianna does comment about all the muscles that he's developed from being on the ship for 4 months when they get together. So,
and he's also very tall.
Mm-hmm. He's as tall as Jamie.
No, he's 6'3", so he's an inch shorter than Jamie. But he's tall.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm not a part of the writers' room, but I would, if I was them, I would recognize that this lack of chemistry between these two, and rather than try to force it, right? I think that what they should do, what they should have done, and what I hope that they might come to their senses and do in season 5, is try to rebuild our interest in this couple by showing us the interaction and the budding relationship between them and Jamie and Claire, because Jamie and Roger develop a very sweet relationship in the books, and I think that would be a nice way for us to get on board with Roger. And as Brianna discovers her relationship with her father, and Roger and Jamie develop this relationship, and Claire is in the middle being the glue, I think that would sort of maybe overcome some of the lack of chemistry. I hope they don't go down the road of trying to force this relationship down our throats by saying, oh, it's in the book. These latter books is half Brian Rogers' story and half Jamie and Claire's story.
But even in the books, though, I mean, when I read the books, I had no invested interest at all in their relationship.
Me neither. I would just skip over
I don't think, and I think partly it's because I didn't particularly like Brianna, and given now hearing, having read and since that, it was kind of trying to figure out what to do with her because she needed to be a character in the book and not really knowing what to do with her. She came across as bratty and not very well developed. So I don't tend to like people like that.
I also think seeing Roger as a dad might help, but seeing them with Jimmy, and they did have some chemistry problems, or at least some relating problems in the book too. So that is not out of nowhere. And Diana just recently said that in the first episode there is a really great scene between Roger and Jamie. So of season 5. Yeah.
Hopefully. Because there are certain people in Outlander that have chemistry with everybody that they play against. Sam is one of those people. Duncan LaCroix is one of those people. Whoever they play against, they are easy with them. And I think that they should use that more in the show. Especially with characters that are hard to love. At least for me, like Roger and Brie.
Well, and I just think they shouldn't. I agree with you, Antoinette. You're the one that has made me aware of this. I think they shouldn't try to focus so much on the bedroom with those two.
Yeah.
And that they should just, have them do their things and go through their big things that happen in the books, and just kind of do like what they do with Jamie and Claire, where they kiss and then you have to
fade to black. We need lots of fade to black for Roger and Brie going forward. Fade to black. Just see them walking towards the bedroom area. and just use our imagination for the rest.
Gosh.
That's a big thumbs up from me.
I have a question for Carmen, because you've read the book several times. Carmen, what your opinion is, of their relationship in the books? Because
I think I actually think it gets better with time.
okay.
I think early on there wasn't enough flirtatious interaction between them, to get my interest, either in the books or in the show. And but I do think that as the books go on with Diana, she does develop their relationship into quite an interesting one. So I'm reading 4 books at the same time right now. and an Echo in the Bone, it's actually, they've got quite an interesting relationship going on in that particular book. I
Wait,
think
4 of Diana's books?
Yeah.
Wow.
Carmen is the book expert. And haven't you read these like 12 times?
I'm on my 12th on one of them, and then 11 on the rest.
Okay,
Wait a
Carmen.
minute.
Carmen is the book expert.
But you
in this
just
group.
started reading the books when the show started, so that means within the last 5 years,
Yes.
you read them 12 times. Wow.
Yes.
What's your favorite book, Carmen?
I used to say Voyager. Now I'm not sure that I feel that way anymore. I think that Diana's writing gets more compelling as she's a better writer, honestly. And the last 3 or 4 books have just, they're riveting. And A Breath of Snow and Ashes is not a happy book, but my God, that book is just, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's fabulous storytelling.
That's my favorite book.
Yeah, it's got to be. I think it probably is mine too. I do like An Echo in the Bone because some of the interesting things that happen in it, and I don't want to say what they are, because there are a lot of viewers that haven't read. So
I noticed. I think I remember this correctly. She did Outlander as a practice, and then it was published, and they said, "Do you have 2 more in you?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And she pretty, in short order, did
Voyager, Dragonfly,
and then Voyager. And I see a real elevation of her writing from those 3 to Drums of Autumn.
Yeah.
When I was reading that, I was just like, wow. And I know it's not your favorite, Catherine, but just the scenery that she paints with words, that's
one of her many talents.
But to say it's not my favorite is like saying, okay, a piece of cheese pizza versus a piece of, one with everything on it. You're gonna like them regardless. It's like they're still good. It's just that it's not my favorite of hers.
Right.
That's not saying, still one of my favorite book series of ever.
Yeah.
But the one thing I have to say, my favorite part of any of the books, apart from the parts with Joe Abernathy, but I won't get to that anymore, was the scene between Jamie and Lord John when they were going on about how people write long books. So basically they were describing her series of books, but in the process of I thought that was genius. I thought it was just like, it was like almost like she was like making poking at herself.
Yeah, sure,
she was.
She's
making fun of herself.
Which she would do.
I thought that was pretty well done.
What's your favorite?
Voyager is my favorite not only because, but partially because I just felt like it was a quick read. I couldn't put it down, for one thing. I did not sleep for a couple of days reading that one. I think it was her genius really came through when I read that book to me. I think that I recognized it. I saw what it was, but when I saw how she portrayed people that I recognized well, I realized just how much of a genius she really was. I suspected it, and I thought so, but when I read Joe Abernathy's part, his character, and his family and his wife and his son, that's when I knew that this woman has either is a stark raging schizophrenic who can pull out multiple personalities, or she has multiple personalities, or she's just a genius. And obviously she's a genius. We throw around the word genius a lot.
Yes.
We do.
But in her case, I mean, it's true. She just simply is a genius, and there's no question. I mean,
I like to use the term brilliant to describe her, because genius gets weird connotations at times, and I just think that her vocabulary, her ability to bring in multiple senses in the same scene, so that you're smelling, tasting, hearing, feeling, whatever, and combinations of those. She knows her characters. She lets them tell her what they're going to do, which I think I've never heard another author say that except Diana, that's how they write. She lets her characters tell her what they're going to do. And I just think that's really remarkable storytelling.
What do you guys have to say about, there was a big Twitter debate about Roger leaving, and after their argument, Roger left, and that was after that Brianna gets raped, and a lot of people had a lot of thoughts about that. What do you guys think?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't really care, because by that time I was so over Roger. I didn't really care. I wasn't invested enough to get mad at Roger for leaving. I thought the argument was just manufactured melodrama. It just erupted, and just escalated so quickly, for two people who had just pledged themselves to each other and who have just had this fantastic lovemaking experience. And then in the blink of an eye, it's like, I'm going, and okay, go.
Nobody's stopping you.
Exactly. I didn't buy it.
I'm actually of two minds. Well, a couple of things. If Bree was of her time enough so that she didn't know not to follow Stephen into a room by herself, he is of that time where he wouldn't think the same of leaving her. I mean, he would have seen her as more of an equal than anyone of that time. So if she says go, first of all, I think that a time when a man is most vulnerable is after he's made love to a woman and she does not act like he is the all to end all. So just the fact that she got angry with him at all would have been such a bruise to his ego that I could see him getting to the point where his feelings were hurt enough to leave. Even though it wasn't permanent. I mean, he came back, but I could see it. I could see how he could see her enough as an individual, an equal, and to have enough of a mind of her own that when she says go, he would go. Either we believe that women have power or we don't. And if they do, and if we do, then when she says go, then he should go. I mean, should he have groveled? Would we have respected him more if he had? I don't think so. But I just thought, I agree with Antoinette. It just escalated far. It just didn't seem like a realistic escalation in normal human nature.
I felt that it was contrived, that it was a device to split them apart so that she could be raped. And with a little more thought, as Antoinette might say, they might have come up with a different scenario so that it wouldn't have played out with him marching out and slamming the door like that. But I think maybe it might have been played out a little bit differently. Maybe people wouldn't have felt like he had done such a bad thing. But I think Catherine makes a really good point that they're both 20th century people. They're not 17th century or 18th century people. So she keeps telling him that she's her own person and she can think for herself, and she doesn't want him to tell her what to do. But yeah, I think there are some problems there with that.
Yeah.
Well,
Another intellectually lazy scene.
Yeah.
Well, I felt, aside from the device part, I felt my frustration with the outcry on Twitter was like, okay, so she can have these feel betrayed and have this big outburst and say, screw you, and get out of here. But he is supposed to keep his emotions under control enough to be a gentleman and stay there and take care of her. And I feel that's a really unfair double standard in a time where people want so much equality. Like, why should he have to go through these feelings and then also get command of them, where she's allowed to just, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, but Courtney, by the same token, one, he's older than her. And two, I mean, if you say that you love somebody and you have just declared yourself and pledged yourself to this person for the rest of your life, blah, 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 then I would think that would give you pause in the heat of the moment to say, you know what? Let's just de-escalate the situation. Let us just calm down and let me take the higher road. Not because I'm soft, not because I don't want you to exercise your agency as a powerful woman, but because I'm making a choice because I love you and because I want this relationship to work. That would have been more authentic to me.
But why him? But why him?
Yeah.
Why would he have to be the one to do that as opposed to her?
No. But she is the one who feels hard done by. She's the one who feels aggrieved. She's the one who felt that he did something to her. Okay. So it's her. She's the one who is poking the fire because she feels aggrieved.
But then all the stuff that he's upset about comes up. Like, you left, you didn't tell me, you left me the stupid letter.
Yeah, but all of his stuff is about how he was feeling, what she did to him.
Right. So I mean, they're just
her to do that.
They're just going into their pain, right? That's very I mean, I don't know about you guys, but with my husband, we could escalate that quickly. I'm fiery.
Actually, come to think of it,
I mean, I could be like,
but you could escalate. But isn't there a point where before it gets out of control that somebody would step back?
No. One of us leaves.
We
walk away
and leave, and then we'd work it out later,
and then calm down, and then come back together.
He was as immature acting in that scene as she was. He said that she was acting like a child, and maybe she still wasn't grown up or something to that effect, and he wasn't acting all that mature either. But and one point about what I said before about them being 20th century people, he had just come across the Atlantic on a ship and watched women and children being thrown overboard. He had to have had a perception that in that time, it wasn't quite the same as in the 20th century. And I would think he would have been more guarded about then. I rethink my position. I think he should have been more guarded about leaving her. They could have still done that. He could have taken her back to the inn. She could have gone up to the room, and after he left, decided that she was going to go back down for some reason, and then came across Bonnet, and without having to go through all this drama of the fight. Now, they did fight in the book. So in that regard, I think they did have that knockdown, drag out type fight, and she was, screaming at him from the upper story of their room and so forth. But the story then varied from what happened in the book compared to what happened in the TV. And so that might be the reason why I don't know why they decided to have them fight, since they were going to go in a different direction anyway with what he did after he left.
I don't know. I think there seems to be an investment in making Rogers kind of seem like it's almost like Richard pissed somebody off.
And not seem like a likable guy.
Yeah, because it's true, because I mean, even in that scene, and how I was feeling and what you did to me. And then in the Idiot Hut, it was, oh, I love the woman, and it was all about me, poor me, look at me, I'm suffering, it's me. And the Roger in the book didn't come across that way to me. You know, the Roger in the book was more
mature,
was more mature, was more intellectual. This Roger seems to be a douche.
Well, I don't take him as a douche, but like, and Terry Dresbach wouldn't like this, but you know, they make him so frumpy in that costume, and it just seems like they don't give him any of the redeeming characters.
He's not terribly attractive. He could be made more attractive.
Did you guys have big themes at all? Antoinette, I know you did.
Well, actually, no. I struggled to find a theme because there were so many things happening, so many different threads. You know, it's as if they came to a point in the season where I said, okay, we gotta mention this about the regulator. We gotta have this storyline here. We gotta have this done here. So let's just push all of these things together. I struggled to figure out what they were trying to tell me in this episode. What was I supposed to come away with? And let me just say, yeah, we love, you know, there's an outcry when Jamie and Claire are not in a scene. But if you're going to fling them in a scene, do not make it some gratuitous foolishness. Like with this theater. If I have to see one more surgery scene, I am going to just scream at the telly. We know she's a bloody healer and a surgeon. Stop showing us surgery scenes. I'm sick of it.
Although that was a pretty cool one, though. You gotta admit that was a pretty cool one.
Let's allude to it.
I have to say, okay, that's a bit of a gratuitousness that I liked. I did get excited during that scene because I felt as though it was well done.
Okay, I've got to disagree with Catherine. I did not think the surgery scene was good. Okay.
But the only part that I thought was unrealistic was that it was a little bit on the high side. But
a little bit on the what?
It was high, kind of high up on the abdomen.
Oh yeah.
But the other was that, and where she did her incision. But as far as the sound effects, the fact that they actually showed it, that his symptoms were very realistic and what they would, and how it happened, that it happened, his reaction to it, his body's reaction to it, and how she chose to treat it. However, one thing she did not do is she didn't sew the muscle. She only sewed the skin. That was a little bit off because she didn't do 2-layer incision closure
repair.
Yeah, because she had she pushed it in and then closed the outer. But I was like, but she didn't fix the hole from the inside. But I still felt that overall that part of it, by layman's terms or layman watching, without getting too technical, I thought it was very well done. I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. And that was, I was watching it, I was like, Carmen's going to have so much to say about it.
Okay, so here's the deal. When she picks up her knife and she starts to make the incision, if you go back and look at it, the hernia is on his left side, and she has the knife diagonally across his lower abdomen near the inguinal region, or the where the thigh meets the body. That's the inguinal region. So she's got her knife right there, and it's directed correctly. Then it shows her cutting across the hernial sac, which you would never do. You would cut along the side of it. If you cut across it, you might slice through the hernia sac and slice the bowel, which would be devastating. You would not want to do that. So they did that really badly. There's too much blood as they're cutting through the skin. And then I couldn't believe this. This is what's called an indirect inguinal hernia that she's doing. There's two kinds of inguinal hernias, and she's doing an indirect. She pushes the bowel toward the midline. If you look at it, that is terrible. it comes from the side over here, and then it comes down toward the scrotum, the bowel as it travels down. Okay, the hernial sac it's called, and it may or may not have bowel in it. Okay, as it comes down, she's pushing it. You look at her fingers, she inserts it into the opening, and then she's pushing toward the midline. She has to push it to the side. That's what pushes it back into the abdominal cavity. Then she sews it up. Then she should sew it up. That was really bad. And then she pushes like it's a real struggle. Well, the bowel is actually very slippery, and there's fat usually there too. And it's not a struggle. It's in terms of having to force it. What's the struggle is keeping it, back where it's supposed to be, because it's very slippery. And those things bothered me. I love the draping with the linen that she did, and I thought she did a good job. But whoever is telling them about the little subtleties of doing surgery is leaving out some things that I think can bother those that know a little bit more. And inguinal hernias are really important. I used to lecture on this very subject.
Actually, because of the way they treated it, I assumed they weren't treating it as if it was a inguinal hernia, but a ventral hernia. Because the way they acted, it wasn't as if that's what they thought. I assumed because there were so many discrepancies, I just assumed that's what it wasn't supposed to be.
You think it was a direct inguinal hernia? Direct hernia?
Oh, direct hernia. It's like just a vent. Like it was just.
Well, I have to say that physically it looked more like what's called a direct hernia, and it comes from a different source than the inguinal. But she says it is an inguinal hernia.
Okay.
That's her diagnosis, and that's why I stayed with it, and then I'm criticizing it based on her diagnosis and the play. The script says that's what was intended. Okay. So hernias are really they're actually pretty interesting things, and these types, the type that this man had, are more common in men because the pathway that the bowel took is the same pathway that the testes descend in the 9th month of intrauterine life. So the testes develop up in the abdomen, but then they descend through the muscle layers down into the scrotum in the 9th month of gestation, basically 8th or 9th month, somewhere around there. And that passageway that it creates is supposed to close up. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does and then opens back up from exertion or whatever. And that's what apparently happened in his case. But it's a really interesting area of the body, and I just thought it could have been done better. Not on Claire's acting. I thought her acting was wonderful, and I love the surgeon. What has hell wrought? What has hell wrought?
Tobacco up the rear.
It's all he needed was some tobacco up the rear.
What do you guys think of how they're developing the relationship between Claire and the governor? I'm interested to see why they're doing it like this and where they're going to go with this, because that's a departure from the books. Yeah. And I'm wondering if it's going to play something in with the whole murder and the regulator.
Brian has a much bigger role in the show than he does in the books.
In the books, exactly. Yeah. I'm interested to see why that is and how that is going to play out. Because I think that's a nice little dynamic there between the governor and Claire. I like that. I'm interested in that.
She won him over awfully easy, I thought.
Yeah. So and he's so manipulative. He doesn't really come across as a dark character. He comes across almost a little more comedic.
Mm-hmm. But then also you have to understand that she's of a class where she would automatically get some respect, and even though she's married to and I think that also played a little part in Jamie getting the land based on the show, not so much in the books, but because I don't remember it well enough in the books.
She didn't have much of a relationship with Tryon in the books.
No, but I could see in this having some influence, but other than that, I can't imagine there being much of anything.
Yeah,
but I thought when he dismissed the surgeons, no need of you or whatever he says. I interviewed Tim Downey and I asked him about this. But he does, during the surgery scene, he does warm to Claire quite a bit, almost to the point of flirtation, in my opinion. So does he see Claire as a elevated or interesting, or, you know, women really weren't? I mean,
Yeah.
how does he see Claire?
I think up until that point, he probably saw her as less than nothing, and just kind of, you know, you shouldn't even be, you know, in these kind of circles. You don't even talk to the men, because the men are talking. These are the adults, and you go and stand on the edge. But I think that incident is so. I think also for him is quite graphic. I would say he's a soldier. I would say he's probably seen a lot of kind of horrible things, but has probably ordered them more than actually had to kind of be face to face with something quite visceral. And I think it's that calmness in a situation that then elevated Claire above her station, if you want to call it that, kind of historically, then above her station, and kind of lifts her into a different level of being that I think he's just never experienced, and I think just kind of totally takes him out of himself to kind of think, you know, this is an extraordinary thing. You know, a woman to have as much wherewithal, as much kind of calmness in the face of adversity is something to be greatly admired. So I think it really kind of wrong-footed him. You know, Jamie, he can kind of go, I've met men like you before. I know how this works because we're men and we deal with this. But I think this is something that was totally out of his remit. So now Claire is something different entirely. You know, it's someone to listen to kind of be almost wary of, almost more so than Jamie, because you kind of think, well, this is something very alien, you know, very, very new.
So many big things happen. I mean, the hand fasting, you know, the rape, you know, Murta almost being captured by the redcoats.
Making love.
So the love making scene. So many big things happen. Why did we have to scrunch all of these big things and then have all these little small things cluttering up the episode as well?
Because we had 407 the time before, and we had Leary and
wandering around
the rabbit hole,
taking up a whole episode with foolishness. And then they complain, oh, we can't get everything into the show because we only have 13 episodes. Well, bloody well, use them better then.
They've gotten complacent because of the fan base.
Yes.
Because of the fan base. I think the fan base they recognize is very loyal, and there really isn't much that's going to make people stop watching. But I think that also it'll be interesting to see what happens with with Kate and Sam being producers, to see what changes. If they'll make it a little wig. If it becomes more sophisticated in its storytelling. Yes. Because they have grown and they've gotten more sophisticated, and they want to expand their acting chops as well. It will be interesting to see what they consider the way to make their talent shine.
They have all the raw material there. Do you know what I mean? You know, they have such a good cast.
Does anyone else have a big theme from today? From this episode. Yes,
I see two big themes. They weren't developed in the way that I had hoped they would be. But one of them to me is, what does it mean when you pledge your life to another person? To pledge they said, plight my troth, and he made her say that. I looked that up because that's an archaic term now, but it means to pledge your truth to another person. What does that mean when you do that? And the other thing that I think is another theme is what rape does to a person. What devastation is the result of that kind of offense. And I think that, as time goes by, we get to see some of that. It reappears, in the next book with Bree. revisits her in PTSD, basically. But those are two big themes that I felt should have been the major themes of this episode, and they were kind of tucked in at the end. And you know, when you pledge yourself to another person, I feel that it is taken very lightly in our society often. And I would like to see a renewal of it not being treated with that kind of lightness. You know, where the big important thing is, I got to have my dress. And, you know, if you think about it, that's what Roger was concerned about. He thought of sheets. He thought of, you know, of nice champagne, nice things, you know. And she said, I don't care about that. You know, that's not important to me, because I think that she was more actually about her pledge. I think that she was being more committed than, in a way, than he was. And I just think that could have been done. I didn't get that kind of lightness between Claire and Jamie, even though Claire, you know, probably knew she was going to go back if she got a chance. It still wasn't treated. Their marriage was not treated with the lightness. And I just am concerned that theme wasn't dealt with as seriously as I would have liked to have seen.
Mm-hmm. My big theme is a continuation of a theme, and it's for Brianna. She trusted and loved her father, Frank, implicitly. And then she found out that there was a betrayal. You know, he's not her real father. And then she comes here and she pledges her truth to Roger. And then she finds out that he kept this from her, you know, this big piece of information that is life-changing. And even when she went in with Bonnet, you know, she trusted her. She had an openness that was like,
yeah,
that's my mother's ring. She wasn't like, she was like, is she alive? You know, she came to him with a trust that was, you know, you've seen my mother. How is she? And how can I get that ring back from you? Can I buy it? You know, and then she's raped. And then it continues on when Jamie beats up Roger, you know. You can see where Brianna would not be a man lover after all these things. So that's what stood out for me as a big theme.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way.
Mm.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, Courtney. I have to, when I do my rewatch, I will have to see if I can see that thread as well, because that's what I like. I like to see the threads develop and pull through, and you know, and gives layers to the characters. So thanks for that, Courtney. I will certainly bear that in mind when I'm rewatching through this exceedingly long Outlander.
Okay, and then let's go to things we noticed. Should we have the pro start us off, Carmen?
I had Roger's nose bending as one thing. The surgery thing. One of the things that I did not like was that Luke in his script says that when Bree walks back to the inn from having had her pledge to Roger and their lovemaking, he calls it the walk of shame. And that really bothers me. You know, I mean, I can see him saying a walk of devastation, that she was just heartbroken by the turn of events.
How old
but walk
is this
of
guy?
shame?
Exactly.
How old is he?
Well, do you remember I said I met his boss and he said he's around 40? I mean, the walk of shame, that's when you hook up with somebody and you go home in your clothes the next morning.
But that is not even a walk of shame.
Exactly.
It's not, yes.
He just got married.
I don't think that
but
was.
Even that's a problematic term, even for whatever happened.
No,
right. Yeah. I mean, I know.
Have a one night stand hook up. That's not a walk of shame.
That she's responsible for having done something to be ashamed about, and I didn't like that. I loved the comment, "Never trust a Virginian." I thought that was that was really good. And then I also like Roger's comment that behaving as if your spinal cord has been removed is pretty good indication of male satisfaction. I thought that was awfully good too.
That's straight from the book. That's a Diana line.
It is. And that's probably why I like it so much. Let's see. There was a couple of Easter eggs in it that I saw. One was that George Washington surveyed Fraser's land the year before. And in the book, it's Roger that surveys the Fraser's land, if you remember. So I thought that was interesting that they decided to do that. I don't know why. And that that awful play, The Prince of Parthia, was a real play. That was the first play actually written in the United States by a man from Wilmington, apparently. And as Martha said, it was lugubrious, which means dismal.
Did you have to look that up? Did you guys know lugubrious?
I did.
I assume. I didn't.
I wouldn't.
I looked it up.
I looked it up too, but I had a different word for it than that. I thought of it more as a slow, slow acting and not very interesting. And but dismal was the word that I saw.
But I feel like plays back then were,
probably
not always that great.
But plays back then were more oratory than actual scenes and interaction. It was more people getting up and monologuing, or just two characters just going back and forth. It wasn't the modern day plays as we know it, because really, if you look at a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of it is just people on stage, having monologues and that kind of thing. So I thought that I thought the whole play thing was interesting. I don't remember if that was in the book, because it's been a bit. It wasn't.
No,
What the play wasn't?
No.
That was just their invention.
Oh.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean? Even though I thought it was cute, you only have 13 episodes. So you're going to invent something that wasn't even in the books.
Well, it's a vehicle. It's a vehicle, because the only time they'll let Jamie go off without Claire is when she's doing surgery.
You know what I noticed? For the first time in Wilmington, I think I detected the CGI. I hadn't before.
Oh, really?
Yes, for the first time. I looked at it and I said, oh, I can see the CGI at the back there. Yeah, that was the first time I've ever noticed it.
I would like to share one thing about the theater. It apparently was an old church in Glasgow, and they completely renovated it to create that scene of being a theater in 48 hours.
Wow.
That's pretty astonishing.
Well, I think
the sets are really something.
The inside is a set, though. Do you mean the outside?
They built a set. That's what I'm talking about.
But the theater.
Did it they built the theater set inside of the church and got it all, the facade and everything all set up in 48 hours.
That's a standout for me, that theater. That set. Location / set.
I think it was. And did you see the color of the walls, Kat?
Oh God! Wait, no, don't go there. Well, I noticed a few things because Carmen has helped me to do this. In the horse and carriage scene, I can't remember which one it was, but there was one of the horses had this egg beater move with his back.
I'll have to look at that. It was wonky.
Yeah, it's his right back leg, and he does that egg beater. Not even every step, but I'm a horse person, so. Have you guys ever noticed when Sam is Jamie and he's looking around, he kind of goes. There's never it's kind of like a jerky movement. I don't know what that is, but
it's one of his quirks.
Yeah, I've seen it over and over again. Tryon's wife is taller than he is, which is a little bit unusual for then, and she's as tall as Claire. So I found that casting interesting because it's not like it's a big role. Anyway, I also said I like the exchange between Washington and Jamie. Oh, that was a different one. Is there a war I'm not aware of? There is, sir.
Yes.
As foreshadowing. And do people with red hair have black eyebrows?
They can
usually, but
they can.
Okay, they can, because Brianna, I always notice her black, very dark eyebrows.
I think they're dark brown, but that's because she's not a natural red.
Right.
She has dark hair, and they're not dyeing her eyebrows. But I think it's not uncommon for people for their eyebrows to be. They can be a slightly bit different color than their hair. On their head, just the same as the beard is often not the same color as the hair on a man's head.
And
although usually it's
the
lighter,
curtains and the what is that saying?
The curtains and the drapes.
What?
No, that's not it.
This isn't like dry humping, is it?
It is.
It's another one. Do your curtains match your drapes? No, because those are both wall hangings.
Yeah, but
that's what they say.
Isn't that the same?
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't make
weird,
sense.
isn't it?
Yeah.
When Roger says, "I've always wondered what color your hair is down here," he undressed her and she was standing right in front of him. He didn't notice or look. I thought that was.
Or maybe he just happened to mention it. That was the thing. I thought that was the grossest scene with his nasty, dirty fingernails
on her lips.
Puts it on her. Thinking viruses, bacteria, all the good.
More mimicking of Jamie and Claire, which is unnecessary.
Yes,
let them develop their own thing.
That line is from the book, also, where Roger says, "I've always wondered." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, but she wasn't standing before him in candlelight naked.
Yes.
That was my point.
Yes. There was another horse and carriage takeoff that alarmed me. When after they go and they say that they're drunk and Murtaugh's saved, this horse literally falters behind really badly before they take off. And I mean, I was like, that's almost, you shouldn't even put that in there because anyway.
Was that the men riding in back of the coach?
No, it was a horse.
One of the horses pulling.
The horses in the carriage.
Oh,
I think the first carriage might have been George Washington's that I noticed with the egg beater, and that was the carriage full of all the redcoats. Maybe they were actually in there, and the horse was overloaded. I don't know.
Trying to get traction.
Yeah, and it was probably messy.
Yeah,
muddy.
Carmen brought up for 412 that we never see Fergus meet Bree. And in this episode, Roger shows him her picture, and he's never seen her before, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was just something I noticed. Did he remember her from the picture?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
But again, go ahead.
I think that's it. Yeah. That's all my stuff.
I think the fact that we went through this whole episode and no one once mentioned Fergus other than him meeting Murtaugh is a problem. What are they doing to Caesar?
With Caesar?
Caesar Den boy.
I
mean, do they think he's a horrible actor or something? I mean,
no, I think
they don't give him anything.
I think it's because they've said, okay, we have Jamie and Claire, and then we have to get time for Sophie and Richard, and then we got young Ian has a really big part, and then you got Murtaugh is back, so it's more like they just don't have time to develop.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, they can give him lines that are better. I mean, he and his interactions with Marcelly. I mean, I'm more invested in their relationship than with Bree and Roger. I just find them far more.
And I was in the books too, actually.
Yeah,
exactly. I want to see more of them. And I don't buy this foolishness about they have too many things to do and they can't highlight the Fergus and Marcelly relationship more because they have time for an awful lot of nonsense.
Yeah, I think that would be I think that's the answer in their mind.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any standouts that you haven't mentioned?
I have one big theme, and that is never use Lizzie as a confidant or a witness.
She is.
Bless her heart.
And what does she say to the guy? Like, she's still with the
He's
man
that
with the
immoral man.
with the loose morals.
with the loose morals, and he's kind of like, sure.
Huh?
Yeah.
What?
She's a bit judgmental, isn't she? She only saw him, put her arm, and all of a sudden, she has him, as the devil incarnate.
That's true. She hasn't even.
She's a bit judgy. And
Yeah,
then
why
she-
would-
I think that has to do with the writing. I
Yeah.
really do. And that's
Yeah.
what I started out my comments with is that I thought that the writing for this particular episode is uneven, and I think
Yeah.
it's not very well thought through.
Yeah.
I think there
And
was some
I think-
devices, an easy way out of some of the situations.
But I think that I think it also, when you have such phenomenal music, when you have such phenomenal
That's true.
sets, you have such phenomenal costumes, you have, and so it just seems like it's unfair then to have all that excellence and then throw it into something that's mediocre. It makes it look more mediocre than what it really is, simply because of the excellence. So my thing is, step up. Don't dumb down the other stuff. Just step up a little bit. And I think that the acting is stepping up by far. I mean, I think that if you watch the first episode of Outlander and you watch this, this, and I watch this one, and you look at Kate's acting, they're like night and day.
That's true.
Jamie's acting, Sam's acting is about the same. And mainly it's
He's
the
been
writing that
spot on
changes.
from the
Yeah,
beginning.
but it's the writing. The writing has changed, so that
Yes.
it's been But his acting has been phenomenal. And so I think that they really need to. I hope that with all the changes in the costumes and with everything else, I'm just hoping that Gary stays, because we just need some consistency throughout all of it. But and of course he's my favorite, but we know why.
Are you talking about John Gary Steele?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who picks their. It is not just the. It's the sets, but it's all the little details. Like, one thing I noticed was when Claire was cutting the bread, and then they showed this nice heavy, pottery sitting on the table. That is just
It's the set decorators. They do an excellent job.
Yeah, but then of course the walls. And I know people laugh about me in the walls, but really, if you look at the colors,
they are beautiful.
It's like, and it's not a color; it's a color plus a glaze plus another color plus, and then, and I noticed how they change with the light, and I thought it was just me, but then I actually read that they do that on purpose, that they want it to look like candlelight, or they actually use candles, so that the colors glow off in a different way. So
Interesting.
I'm not so weird.
I
Yes, you are.
You're weird, but we love you anyway.
Exactly. You're weird, and we love you anyway. I don't think Gary's going anywhere.
I hope not.
No.
I don't. And
Fingers crossed.
and Gina, I can't remember her last name, is his set deck person.
Oh, the set decoration.
Yep. I truly hope he gets an Emmy nomination for season 4.
I hope so too.
Because
Gary Steele.
Yeah. Oh, he's deserved for every.
Yeah.
If he did for season 2, that's what I don't understand. How did he not get an Emmy nomination for season 2?
he did. He did get an Emmy nomination for season 2.
Oh, he did.
He
Oh,
didn't
okay.
win it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't win, but
Okay.
he and Terry were
He was
both nominated for season 2.
Yeah.
Terry was nominated for season 3 for the whiskey.
Oh, for the 60s. Yeah. The Freedom and Whiskey
episode.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, for the
But
60s.
I think season 4 for Gary Steele is his whatever that word is.
River Run.
River Run. You've got the Mohawk,
the Mohawk
Village.
Even the phrase as Ridge, the cabin. Oh,
Yeah.
Wilmington, the theater. It just
excellent
goes
work.
on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's like
he's gifted.
So, in other words, everybody has to come up to his standard.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That is what you said, Catherine. The shame is that, you know, it's clear that that's a labor of love. Terry's work is a labor of love. The actors really throw themselves into it. And for the writing to be so like, sometimes it's not fair. It's not fair to the rest of them.
Yeah.
I hope that they heard that, because that was the loudest cry coming out of season 4 was Jamie and Clara, the center, you know, keep them as the center in their story.
And like everybody else, let's see the story develop as everybody interacts with them, because that's how it is in the books.
I know Dinah probably would never say this, and I know whatever. I think that given her brilliance also, I think sometimes it's a bit of a disservice to her as well. I mean, like you, Antoinette keeps saying, the source material, you really do, it writes itself. Come on now. I mean, you really don't have to do all that much if you just use the books.
Wonderful example of that in my mind is episode 301, The Battle Joined, which was done by Ron Moore, and he, you know, he melded the book, the pithy quotes from the book into that seamlessly. That episode is, I think, one of my favorites of all seasons. It was just spectacular. He did such a fine job, and I miss his quality of writing in season 4. And there's one example where you can take the resource material of the book, and he did not follow it step by step by step, because, you know, what happened with Rupert was different than what happened in the book. But my gosh, what he did with it was just broke my heart. You know, when Rupert says, you know, make a swift step, you know, I expect you to keep up with me as I go to my death. And it's just, gosh, it was great.
I think that goes to the level of experience and the masterfulness of the writing staff in season 1 versus what we have in. And I will go back and say, I thought Shayna and Bronwyn were really strong.
Yeah, and Kenny was good too.
Yeah, Anne was great.
Yeah, I think they're taking.
Honestly, and I think they're taking the fans for granted. Did Diana mention that she might write one, or did she say she wouldn't? I couldn't remember. I know someone asked her about it.
That would be fabulous.
That'd be good.
Yeah,
that would be fabulous.
And I would love for Ron to come back and write one.
I would too.
Oh, God, me too.
So my point is, I think it goes to hiring.
Yeah.
I think instead of just getting, and I think I told you guys that this producer I met said that that's one of the hardest challenges in a long running show is to retain and, you know, a really dynamic, experienced writing staff, because people then say, okay, I want to go on and do something else. Their family situations change, you know, all kinds of things happen.
Yeah.
Because they get jobs in between time too, sometimes. Yeah. So I thought I would mention just a couple of BTS things. We talked about Lauren Lyle, and Carmen, you said, you know, it's almost as if she's actually experiencing this, and then you feel that she's a very method actor. So
she is.
Yes, by her, she said that.
Training.
Yeah, and she said something about, somebody asked her about what it felt like to be pregnant or something, and she said, "I'm so method, I was pregnant." So I think she is truly Marcelly, and she's experiencing and that's why she's so convincing.
Can I tell you something before you leave this? In a recent issue of the New Scientist, there was a study that showed that actors' brains change when they are able to enter their character and become the character. Their brains actually function differently than they were when they're not in character. And that's not true of all actors, but of actors that do what she's doing, their brains actually change.
so much plasticity, you know, that doesn't surprise me. People.
Well, it kind of does me
Does
because,
it?
yeah, it does. But I think that's what Sam does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
that's why
definitely.
Sam is able to project emotion like what he is, because I think he's actually feeling that.
Yeah.
He's not just
all the way
acting.
to the tips of his eyelids.
No,
When he is interviewed, he answers always about the character. You know, he talks about, you know, this is what happened to Jamie, and Jamie went, you know, he's not doing it as Sam.
right.
So the other thing I thought I'd mention is that Katrina, when she did the George Washington thing, she was like, what is with the cherry tree? She had no idea what the cherry tree references, which is such a common thing for us. She was like,
yeah,
this line means nothing to me, you know.
That's
It's
funny.
actually a myth. It isn't true.
Yeah, and it wasn't even true either.
Yeah, which is why he had no idea what she was talking about.
I cannot tell a. Who is it who said I cannot tell a lie? Was it George Washington?
Yeah, it was George.
Yeah, because
Washington.
he chopped down the cherry tree and he admitted to it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So, anything else, my
Good ones.
lovelies? Yeah.
No.
Oh,
It's 10:30 on our side, so
yeah, they probably want to
we're
go to bed.
fading.
Nope, that's it for me.
Cheers, ladies.
All right, bye. It's so good seeing you guys.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
I've missed your sweet faces.
I know.
Love you guys.
Bye.